Good evening, everybody. My name is David Morgan, Arlington's Environmental Planner and Conservation Agent. May 27th, it's only May 7th actually, May 7th, 2026. Public meeting of the Arlington Conservation Commission be conducted in a remote format consistent with state legislation enabling participation in public meetings remotely through June 30th of next year. This meeting's being recorded and the recording may be made publicly available. I've put all of the meeting materials at the link that I've just entered into the chat. Please note that the Zoom chat feature may be used for questions and comments that contribute to the Commission's procedures, and if it's used otherwise, may be disabled at the Chair's discretion. Public comment period will follow each hearing. We just have one hearing really tonight, and the Commission certainly encourages attendees to ask questions and offer comments during that public comment period. Chuck Turoney is the Commission Chair, facilitates tonight's meeting, and we take every vote with a roll call vote. Begin with review of the agenda and roll call attendance. So over to you, Chuck, for that.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. It's May 7th, 2026, and it's 7:03. So for the agenda, we have administrative review of the minutes, and they are the minutes of April 26th. And then after that, we're going to go into correspondence. I'm going to invoke the chair's privilege, and I'll move up the DPW hearing right after the correspondence. And after that DPW hearing, which is 459 Mystic Street, we'll get back into the discussion items. And after we go through that, we have our hearings, which both have been continued. And then we'll just talk about any business that or is not on the agenda, but we can talk about as permitted by law. And then that will be the end of our meeting. So with that, I'm going to take roll call attendance. Mike Gilderscame.
Present.
Nathaniel Stevens.
Present.
David White.
I'm here.
David Kaplan.
Present.
Brian McBride. I heard Brian say something, so
yes, I'm here,
that.
Chuck. Sorry.
And Chuck Turoney is here. Susan Chapnick is not going to be attending tonight's meeting, and we have associate members. First, Sarah Alfaro Franco.
She just emailed to say she can't make it.
Okay, and then Eileen Coleman. Okay. Looks like Eileen's going to miss tonight's meeting also. So our first item on our agenda is the minutes of April 26, 2026.
All right, so Nathaniel added a few revisions to the version that was on Drive and emailed this in a Word document, which is what we're looking at now. There were really only, as far as I'm aware, so Ryan and Mike, you guys took a look at this one initially, right? And it passed muster initially.
Just a few edits.
Okay.
Yeah, not many.
Let me try and discern. Nathaniel's in blue. Okay, so other Mike and Brian edits here, just some word substitutions, will be in green and red, or maybe pink, but Nathaniel added a bit here about the conservation restriction piece that he's been most closely involved with. Is there anything you want to point out here, Nathaniel?
Thanks. No, just some clarity as to the different terms used and trying to make clear where the fence is, the issue about the fence that's was installed in on the border of the conservation restriction area.
Thank you. And there's a question here about the submittal for 91 Sunnyside, whether we refer to that section that we require on climate resiliency as a narrative or not. It's a word choice we can discuss or not at your discretion.
I think narrative is an okay characterization of it because we're asking them to answer some questions. So,
okay. And there were no further comments. Meeting adjourned at 9:11 that night.
motion to approve the minutes.
Here a second.
Second.
That was Mike Kilskin to second that. David White,
Yes.
David Kaplan,
Yes.
Brian McBride,
Yes.
Mike Kilskin,
Yes.
Nathaniel Stevens,
Yes.
and Chuck Chironi says yes. All right. Gonna move right along to correspondence received, available.
Chuck, just I just one quick comment. I don't know if Mike has a comment. That was our first try at circulating the minutes in the new way, and I don't know. I found it fairly straightforward. I think Jackie sent a Word doc to me. I edited it. I sent it to Mike. He edited it and then probably sent it back to Jackie. And it didn't take a ton of time, and it wasn't too cumbersome in my view. I don't know if Mike has a different feeling.
I agree.
So
Well,
Jackie
maybe
wrote
six-
the minutes and then sent them to you. You made your edits based on the entire meeting or just what you had?
The entire meeting.
Okay. And so then it went out to everyone else and in the format that we usually have after you finish. So that's great. Are you volunteering to do it again, or is it
No.
David
Yeah.
Kaplan and
Glad to see it
Da-
circulate a bit.
David White's turn? I don't know. Is that how we're doing this? Two people each time?
I'll be happy to do the next one or these minutes.
David White, are you available to also do the minutes?
Sure.
Okay, and I
Let
guess
me-
that
let
would
me
leave me and Susan at the
Communicate.
next meeting.
So
So,
I'll be away next week, so it might be best if one of you agrees to go first and then send it to the next one. Just because I won't be there to do the back and forth in between.
sure. So, David White, do you want to take first crack at the minutes, or is it David Kaplan?
Would you like David Kaplan? First or second? Second. Okay, I'll do first then.
Okay, great. So that's all set. And
Sorry,
with
I
that,
had trouble in the
Jackie,
meeting. Sorry.
sure. And with that, Jackie, we're going to get the recording of this tonight's video, right? Okay.
Right.
So that's a standard request now. Every time the minutes go out to members, we'll have the recording to also. All right, so correspondence received is available to the public for a full list of contacts that contact the conservation agent at the link provided by David Morgan. And if you're having any trouble receiving correspondence, then just reach out to David. He'll help you with that. David or Jackie, both of them understand the correspondence. And with correspondence, I wanted to ask Nathaniel Stevens because I believe I understand that you reviewed the Thorndike Place latest letter that we received. Could you give us your version of not your version, but can you just summarize that for us here at the meeting tonight? And David, Susan asked me to make sure you put that on the Thorndike Place page.
Sure. Yeah, the document we received this week is the scheduling order. So that's issued by the administrative judge who will preside over these proceedings. Administrative law judge acts like you would think a judge would. It's just that he's an administrative law judge. He's not in a court of law. So there's some distinctions there, but the major point is that he's going to run these. So he set out a schedule. It sets forth that there will be what's called a pre-hearing conference in 3 or 4 weeks. Before that time, the parties to this, who are the applicant, the petitioners are the people who appealed. So that's the Arlington Land Trust and I think 10 residents and DEP. And the Conservation Commission can be a party if we want. We had discussed at our last meeting that we didn't want to participate, but I did suggest to David that he email back to everyone and say, look, the Conservation Commission is not going to be a party, so we don't need to be in discussions. We're not going to submit testimony. We're not going to actively participate in this, but please copy us on anything that's filed so the commission can keep apprised of what's happening. And if we want, I guess, David's so inclined, he could post all those things up on the website if he wants. But anyone who's interested, member of the public can contact this Office of Administrative Appeals at DEP and get documents if they want. So I don't think it's necessary to do that if that's too much of a lift. But anyway, so it is a scheduling order. It directs the applicant and the petitioners to confer prior to that to see if they can settle the case. If not, then they go to a hearing, and the petitioners will have to have experts and file testimony on what the issues are on the issues, which we imagine one will be the whole thing about the stormwater standards and the estimated seasonal high groundwater. And perhaps there's other issues. And then the department files testimony, the applicant files testimony, and then they all get written testimony, and then there's the hearing. So it's the same process that I described before, but this is the scheduling order. This is the first sort of official thing to kick it off. So happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions on the commission about that summary? See, Brian, is that you raising your hand, Brian?
Yeah,
Your actual
I'm trying
hand?
to get off mute with small letters. Yeah, I was just curious about two things, Nathaniel. One is this sort of negotiation that surprised me. Is that a standard part of this process? And I'm just surprised that anyone would negotiate rather than go to a hearing.
It is, yes. That was instituted 20 years ago or so. That's part of the process. They want the parties to try to see if they can settle this, because they don't want to spend scarce government resources, DEP staff time, dealing with an appeal that could be settled. So they really strongly encourage this. And it also depends on the administrative law judge that you end up with. Some are very much trying to get the parties to settle. Others just say, okay, you tried, let's move on, type of thing. But yeah, we've done it.
Thank you. That's perfect. And my second question is it said something like the burden of the process is on the objector, which I guess would be the land trust and the residents.
Which are the petitioners. Yep.
The petitioners. Thanks. Does that mean they have to find like a faulty fact of some kind in order to overturn it? Or I'm not sure what it meant. Like the burden was on them to.
Well, it's the burden of proof, if you're familiar with that concept, from TV, and guilty beyond a reasonable doubt is the standard of proof for a criminal proceeding. For civil proceeding, it's a little bit lighter. It's less of a burden, because less is as of stake, because no one's going to jail. There's no crime being committed. It's just a matter of does the project meet the performance standards. So it's on the burden of the petitioners to prove with credible evidence from a competent source that the DEP screwed up in issuing the SOC. So once they do that, if they succeed in that, then the DEP and the applicant can try to rebut that. Then the judge has to decide.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Any other questions for Nathaniel about the Thorndike Place latest correspondence? Seeing none, we will be moving on at this point to our DPW hearing. So this is a request for A request for determination of applicability for 459 Mystic Street. The Conservation Commission holds a public meeting to consider the request for determination of applicability for an RDA for fieldstone wall repair above Herbert Meyer Brook culvert near 459 Main Street. And I know that we have Bill Copperthorne here, but I'm not sure who else we have here to speak. So Bill, why don't you introduce yourself for the record, introduce whoever is also presenting, and go ahead with your presentation.
Great, thanks, Chuck. Bill Copperthorne, Town of Arlington Town Engineer. I'm joined by my fellow engineer, Wolfgang, who I'll let introduce himself in a second. So Wolfgang's going to do the bulk of the heavy lifting here. I'm just here for added support and questions should they come up. So with that, I'll turn it over for Wolfgang to introduce himself and give the presentation.
Thank you. So I'm Wolfgang Kirstein. I am a civil engineer with Arlington DPW, working under Bill. And I am here to present the request for determination of applicability for our project at the closest to 459 Mystic Street. The project is going to be right over the Herbert Meyer Brook culvert. I will share my screen. I'll show you some photos so we can start this. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So it is the main reason behind this project is there's a very large hole in this retaining wall, which is very unsafe for the general public, anyone passing by. This is a fieldstone wall. It's a pretty straightforward project. And you can see this deterioration on both sides. Here's our best photo showing the conditions of this retaining wall. It is holding up our sidewalk in the public right away. And here you can see the just how deteriorated. Really want to do this project as soon as possible to correct the very unsafe conditions, and also because we don't want anything else falling into the brook from the wall. So it's a pretty straightforward masonry project, but they're going to dig down to most likely the top of the culvert, and then build up and tie into the competent wall to the left and right of this photo. Here's the view of the brook, very nice. And here's the plan view, a very simple plan view showing our proposed work. So to prevent any debris from falling into the brook from the construction activities above, we're going to have the contractor install a tarp over the brook to catch anything that falls down. And then for the adjacent catch basins that we have seen in the first photo, we're going to have them install a silt sack, or sorry, a sediment trap to catch anything that may somehow flow into the catch basin from the work. We're gonna have to replace the sidewalk in front of the wall in order to do the repairs. So it's very limited to what is touched, what is required to be touched. That's pretty much the bulk of the project. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Sure. Thanks, Wolfgang. It was great. Maybe we can go back to some of those pictures.
Yeah.
But so don't take down the screen. So I don't know if there's any commissioners here that would like to ask some questions. Just raise your hand or speak up. And I see Nathaniel Stevens raised his hand, so take it away.
Thanks, Wolfgang. How long will the project take do you expect?
It should, it's a small stretch of wall. Should not be too long. I'm not sure about the dates, but Bill, can you chime in?
Yeah. So I've talked to a couple contractors about it. We haven't bid this or actually we'll probably be asking for quotes based on the price that we expect it to be. Um, but I've heard, depending on the contractor, 1 to 2 weeks is the overall duration of what we expect it to take.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions from commission members? Just raise your hand or speak up. Seeing none, I have a few. I have a few questions. So I noticed that in the paperwork, you're making sure you use the word sediment trap. I was wondering what you meant by that because you did say silt sack, which I'm familiar with. Is there a difference?
No, I just misspoke. That was pretty different. Like tilt sacks for like erosion control, but this it should be a typical insert for a catch basin to catch sediment that happens to flow in.
Okay.
It's just very typical. Um,
Okay. Well, no, I just wanted to make sure that we're talking about a silt sack because I think that would do the job. I did also want to ask, I was kind of when I looked at this, there's obviously a lot of this picture we're looking at here. There's always a lot of problems on the outlet side of this culvert, and it's pretty unique to see a culvert that's made out of brick. But how are you going to maintain, your commitment to not get anything in the brook? I think I'm looking at this and I'm wondering how you're going to affix a tarp or something to this brook. And that's my first question. I think a tarp, I'd like to know how that works because I don't see any points where you could actually, tie it to. Originally, I thought the wall would help, but it looks like it's below the wall.
so we leave the we want our contractor to propose a means and methods for us to approve, but they should be able to anchor something into the ground and into the mortar joints of the nearby retaining or nearby wall, and also beneath the current wall. But I guess as they get lower and lower, they would need to keep in mind like where those anchors are, and then adjust the tarp as needed to make sure that they don't all of a sudden make it loose and have it fail. Um,
Yeah, I'm concerned about the top, and I have to tell you, when you come back to the conservation, I don't like someone just saying, "Hey, means and methods, we know nothing about it." The way around it for the Conservation Commission is we just put conditions on, but it also, if we just put a condition on, then we're creating a method that you have to implement to, make sure the stones and the mortar doesn't fall into the brook. So I'm still concerned about how this is going to be fixed to the wall. I would want you to be very careful about that. I think in the heat of what's going on, you're going to lose some material with just a tarp, and maybe some staging somehow could be implemented. It's you know it seems to be kind of like a black hole of the application of how this erosion control is going to work. But I'm gonna be thinking about a condition and move on to my next question. So in the application, you did say that you're going to do some saw cutting and you're going to, this wet saw, or you're going to put water on it. Do you have something that you're going to be mopping up or soaking up the slurry also? Because we don't want that in the stream either. That's, yeah, we all know what that is. I see your head shaking. So could you let me know how that's going to be taken care of?
okay. So um, we're gonna have the contractor put erosion control where needed to prevent any of that slurry from flowing into the brook. But we will have contractor clean up daily. Um, Bill,
Sure.
what?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I'll add
sure,
one
go ahead,
thing,
Bill.
Chuck, if you don't mind. So I was more thinking when in regard to the wet saw, and I think I might have just in taking a quick peek at how we wrote it. Um, what I was envisioning was more up on the top, where we're going to have to saw cut sections of the asphalt to be able to pull out the section right in front of the wall. The wall itself is pretty much crumbling. I think what they'll ultimately just do is try to pull it out with a mini excavator bucket. And I don't anticipate on the wall portion itself to actually need to be using any saw. Just the material is loose enough that we're going to just essentially be able to pull out any competent portion of the wall. So that was really what the intent was with the sawing, more so to keep dust down. That was the thought with that.
Mm.
So I'm thinking more street side in that regard, which then the catch basins would be the biggest concern, keeping any slurry, as you noted, out of the catch basin. So we can either require not wet sawing, dry sawing, to keep that material out and just do sweeping and cleaning of the material that's around the cut. Um, or implement a little, we could have them include I'm going to call it a boom, but just around the area where the saw cutting is happening to keep the liquid material away.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan. Um, this is a mortar intense project. Is there a designated area for mortar, for cleanup of that, and to ensure that you have like uh, the remains of the cement can be put in an area so it won't filter down into this. Like, we usually ask for a stockpile area or a staging area or
Mhm.
something like that. So this cement um, area would be designated so you can keep an eye on all that loose material. Is that
Mhm.
acceptable?
That works for us. We could even take it a step further and essentially have them provide a small containment area. Usually, I know when we're doing a bigger project, we'll say all mixing or all materials needs to be a certain distance away from the site. Obviously, if we're going to have to do some mortar on the wall, we're going to have to be bringing it over here anyways. So if we want to set up a little staging area, whether it's if there's a certain distance you'd like us to keep that away, we're happy to do that. And we could have them set up a little, even whether it's a wooden, I'm just gonna call it a wooden box, for the mixing to occur inside, so that even if there's any spillover, it's into the box, not into the roadway, to keep any of the cleanup from even being on the road surfaces.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I like that idea. Um, I, as I'm looking at this, so I would prefer instead of the tarp or as part of the tarp to have some sort of like level platform just
Mhm.
on top of the culvert that's exposed and somehow anchored into the wall and sitting on the bank because that's going to give you at least 4 foot of runway of a solid surface that's not going to fall off. And maybe you can even put like a backstop to it. But I'm interested, in you just understanding that I have some concerns about that. You're going to have to relay these to whoever gets the contract and let them know that this is a big concern. We don't want anything into the pond or into that bit of Herbert Meyer brook. Uh, Last question, or maybe one more after that. Is there any stone in the brook that you feel like you're going to take out or need to put back in the wall? Or you're just leaving what's in the brook there?
So upon my inspection and taking these photos, I did not notice any. Uh, I wasn't really looking for it, but I haven't noticed any of the stones that
So no
are
work in the
the
brook. Okay. last thing I wanted to just mention is that, it's very typical for these, type of projects where you're doing road work and you're, public way work. It can be an RDA, but I was reviewing the notice, I was reviewing the application and then looking at the WPA about what is the threshold, and it seemed to me that it was bank work. So if you were in some way to disturb the bank with this project, it seems like that the Wetlands Protection Act directs us to not accept this as a request for determination of applicability. So I just want to hear from you that you're not intending to do any bank work and you're going to do your best to keep people off the bank.
Yes, we want to keep people off the bank. I just focus, stay, um, ideally within the right of way, minimize any activities from the bank. Yeah.
Okay. Uh, Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions regarding this project?
Yeah, I'll just echo your concern about, the concrete work and making sure that there's no washout too. I know that's pretty common for like to, wash out their equipment at the end of the day. Usually goes in a catch basin or down the slope into the stream. So as part of that mixing area, you just make sure to direct the washout, to happen somewhere away from the resource as well, please. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other questions, we're going to turn to the public here. Is anyone here? So it's easiest to see the public if you take down the screen for a second, but you might be asked
Okay.
to put it back up again. Is anyone here from the public that would like to speak regarding this project at Mr. Gav? Just use the raise hand functions. There's a raise hand. It's on the reactions button. I don't see anyone. I just see Bill's got his hand up. Bill, did you have a question? Copperthorne?
Yeah, I do. Just in regard to one of your questions, Chuck, in any material being in the brook, should we, like Wolfgang said, we weren't necessarily seeing anything when we've gone out there. If we do notice something in the stream, based on whether the conditions of the brook are lower or anything while we're out there, would the commission want us to remove any stone we see, or is it preferable to keep it where it is?
So in my opinion, I'll hear what everyone thinks. In my opinion, what was on the stone wall in that retaining wall doesn't belong in the brook, but you don't have to do an exhaustive cleaning. If it's, I don't want you to disturb the brook to get something that doesn't make any sense. Um, so if there's a question, I want you to reach out to David because stones in the brook, I mean, like if it was like a flat bottom, but I can't remember if this is a natural bed or if it's concrete or what's there. But if stones in the brook create oxygen when the water crashes past it, and so some of them are good, but too much creating an obstruction is not good. But I would say if you had any questions, we're going to have you talk to David Morgan about that.
Okay, great.
Okay, so commissioners, are there any other questions or motions?
Motion to close the hearing.
A second?
Second.
So that was Mike Gildersgame, and we're going to go with David White
Yes.
and David Kaplan,
Yes.
Brian McBride,
Yes.
Mike Gildersgame,
Yes.
and Nathaniel Stevens.
Yes.
Chuck Teroni says yes also. All right, so let's talk about conditions. Do you have any? We have work will happen in low flow conditions, no work on the bank, concrete washout station will be established. Do we want to set a distance? But I don't know if we want to set a distance, but as long as it's kind of in the side, like off the sidewalk in the roadway area, I assume you're going to block one lane of traffic maybe with this project, but how does that work? I don't want to tell you to be off the sidewalk if that's not proposed, because I don't want to tell you dangerous. So I could say at least 10 feet away,
Okay.
which seems to be out of the culvert area.
The road's wide enough there that we'll probably take what is essentially the parking lane and still have two-way traffic, so it shouldn't be too much of an obstruction.
So if we said establish a washout station in the parking lane area, that would work. At least 10 feet away from the storm drains.
Perfect.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If you find stones that are in the stream bed that are part of the wall, you will remove them. As per my description of, you don't have to do an exhaustive cleaning. Any other conditions from commission members?
Chuck, did you have one about the tarp? Or
Yeah,
no?
I don't,
Well, one thought is once the contractor is selected, that they send that to David Morgan for review, and he could send it to you, and you could provide some input.
sure. So let's say something like exactly what Nathaniel said. We're going to get some sort of drawing or description of how the tarp will work, and then it will be held for review and approval by David and myself, if that's okay with the commission. Maybe some comments happen, and once that's approved, we will sign off on the project and allow you to move forward with this. I think it might be one of the first thing that goes in, so it wouldn't be acceptable to not have this finalized prior to the project. Okay, so that's a good condition. Any others? Or motions to close and issue?
Motion. I think we motioned to close already, so I'll make a motion to issue a determination negative that we have jurisdiction, but no notice of intent is required with the conditions that we just discussed under the act and the bylaw.
Can I have a second?
I'll second it.
David White.
Just this
So Mike Gildersgame,
Yes.
David Kaplan,
Yes.
Brian McBride,
Yes.
Nathaniel Stevens,
Yes.
and David White,
Yes.
and Chuck Teroni says yes. Did I get everyone? Seems like it. Okay, well, that was it. I appreciate it, Wolfgang. Congratulations. It's all going to get easier from here. All right.
Thank you.
And Bill, we'll see you. We'll see you around.
All right. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bill. Good to see you.
Okay. Moving right along. Yeah, moving right along. So let me find my agenda. Here we go. So we're going to do our discussion items now. And the first thing on our discussion items is the Mount Gilboa feasibility study presentation. I believe David Morgan is leading this, but I'd like to start out by saying that this is a presentation. This is not really a public information or public input session, and we will take a few questions. Of course, we'll take questions from the commission, but we'll take a few questions from anyone who's attending tonight's meeting, but we're not going to get to everyone. I'm only going to take a few so we can get along with our agenda, which is quite lengthy for tonight. So with that, David, could you proceed?
Yeah, you're seeing my screen now?
Yes, I am.
Great. So full credit to Jackie who prepared this presentation. I've got around 20 slides. I'm going to try and spend 30 seconds or less time on each of them so that we can cruise through. Tell you what's ahead. The scope of the feasibility study that the town conducted, including the history, feasibility, results in terms of the sort of priorities and vision and the recommendations that resulted from it. And then the most important piece, in that this is what the commission requested, is a review of the concepts for the future use of the property. You'll be familiar with Gilboa. It's our second highest point in Arlington, over the western edge of town. home to a house and garage on the site dating to the early 1900s. As with all of Arlington, territory of the Massachusetts tribe, and sort of transferred to settler farms and later a residential subdivision, and then eventually in the 20s and onward became the neighborhood that it is today. And the site itself is maintained for passive recreation habitat. Town acquired it two parts in 1967 and 1990. And of course, it's a Conservation Commission property now. And the part that the house sits on was part of that later acquisition, and it's been rented in recent years, but is no longer rented. It wasn't really a sustainable venture. Maintenance is big consideration with a historic house, and it was insufficient to cover those needs. So the feasibility study resulted from recognition of that fact, exploring what it would look like to improve the passive recreation area there and ensure access, universal access. Part of those concerns you can see pictured here is a very steep overgrown. I mean, there's literally, you can see sort of the top of the stairs there, plants emerging from the cracks in the bricks there. Certainly not an easy access point. Generally, it being a mountain, technically. I mean, that's the name, but a big hill. Steep grades, there's definitely a lot of ledge, outcrops. It's not exactly the easiest to traverse, and our open space and recreation plan notes, of course, that we try to accomplish ADA compliant access to all of the open spaces in town. Something we've made great strides on in our fields and playgrounds and so forth, less so in conservation areas so far. So the study had a few goals on hand that you see on screen now. The first, of course, was visiting with the community and talking with them about what they want to see. Then the crux of the matter being the property. We were looking to figure out what to do with the house and garage, as I mentioned, to increase accessibility and enhance the conservation value. And this was, I believe, about a year of effort unfolding across these 5 project areas. Essentially, this simply describes moving through a feasibility study, but one of the important things to point out here is number 3, that there was a really close look at the land, buildings, and the regulations and sort of legal environment that surround those things. So we did a thorough analysis of the structures, did an inventory of the sort of historical value there, looked at the historic landscape and thought about its current state and so forth. And the rest is basically the rest of what follows in this presentation. Some great notes here about what I've described and what resulted from the community input. Folks really value the natural space that's there and want to maintain the wildness of that property. And on the right-hand side here, you see some remarks from the town, and those are explaining the sort of financial impact of maintaining the house and the circumstance of, you know, not being able to rent it with sustainable income and so forth. So in line with that kind of feedback, the priorities that emerged from all of the community events and so forth were to ensure the area's preservation, ensure that it remains a protected asset that the town holds, and not subject it to becoming essentially a park. This is really a wild area that should be maintained into the future. This more or less elaborates on the previous slide. I guess some of the things to note here are how the land is currently used. The middle bullet there speaks to that best, saying there's a lot of walking. It's a cut through for the students going to the nearby schools, place to relax outside, enjoy passive recreation, and so forth. There are some encroachment issues. You note in the bullet below, it's not a very well defined boundary to the parcel. So yards sometimes edge into what is technically the protected area. And here you'll see topmost recommendation of the landscape and building assessment was to demarcate those boundaries better so that it is clear that it is conservation area. The other values here are represented, in terms of the landscape features. And you have a great view of Boston, for example, from the high point, especially in the house. You can see the glacial erratics and the geology of the area when you go around the property. Of course, this is also something of an impediment to putting in a trail system if that was desired. And it's generally not maintained with that kind of intent right now. So you'll see there are some trailheads and there's a kiosk, etc., but they're not very well kept, and neither are they that informative. And there are no trail markers to really tell people which way to go or how difficult it is to go across that land. So the recommendations coming out of the study, short of the concepts, were to affirm that it is in Article 97 place protected land, and or if that's either not possible to determine, or if it is not the case, then ensure that there's a permanent conservation restriction on the property. Again, demarcate the boundaries, upgrade the trailheads, figure out how to make it more ADA compliant, and then increase the participation and stewardship at the property. Given the use, there are also recommendations to figure out how to deal with refuse and dog waste and things of that nature. Find some way to enhance the wayfinding. If we are to use it as a trail system, then wayfinding and interpretation would be important. Open question about what happens to the house and garage, but folks felt that regardless, it should be commemorated in some sense. There's a significant, history there. And the remainder of this slide talks about connection in various forms, whether it's landscape connectivity and, habitat availability, stormwater management, so on and so forth, or working with the students and residents who are the current users of the space to do future planning. So now on to the meat of it, the three concepts that the Commission wanted to review. I'll just dive right in. This is not a final word on what the possibilities are for this site. Of course, this is simply a feasibility study, so you can mix and match from these concepts. But to start with number one, this would see the house and garage driveway removed. This is the area basically here, and actually no, it's over here where the house is, and this would provide a area for essentially rewilding, formalize what is already a small parking area for access to the land, and then develop a compliant pathway for a viewing area, both sort of partially up the trail and at the opposite end of the trailhead. And then what's delineated here in dashed lines are the sort of social trails that exist already and could be enhanced. Concept B also sees the house removed, but you maintain the driveway that's there now. This is roughly where the garage is. So you turn that into a parking area. Also establish a overlook path to a structure at the, well, not quite at the top, but near the top, and then have an informal sort of footpath up to the summit. This structure would be more of a shelter than just like a viewing platform, so it'd be a little bit more built out. And here they're proposing some clearing at the ridge line here, basically to ensure that you have a nice view of Boston. Third and final one would see the house maintained, subdivided into lots so that the property with the structures is sold off by the town and presumably redeveloped or enhanced in some fashion, through private ownership, and then use those proceeds to enhance the surrounding area and ensure their protection. We surveyed the public about what they preferred in terms of these concepts. Overwhelmingly, it was concept A, the first one that I described to you. And where to go from here? I mean, this is the recommendation of the feasibility study. Again, it's at the commission's discretion about how to proceed here, but they recommend moving forward to a final design for one of the chosen concepts, doing further outreach to a townwide audience, and then, of course, as always, considering the stakeholder feedback throughout the process. And that's where we are today. I'm happy to do questions and or just turn it over to you for discussion.
So David, yeah, I had a question. You're saying that the Article 97 is unknown at this point. What would it take to look into that and get a final answer? And then I was going to ask, why don't you just put a conservation restriction on it anyways? But with that final slide, I saw that if you use that developer concept, you couldn't put a conservation restriction until the lot was subdivided. So,
right. The state considers it Article 97 protected. They have it listed and displayed as such on their maps and so forth. So as far as EEA is concerned, this is Article 97 land. The difficulty is in proving that the town voted in such a way at town meeting to set this land aside for conservation and recreation purposes, and making that paper trail material. So, we've looked at the votes. It's kind of ambiguous. It is assigned to the Conservation Commission, so the intent seems clear, but could be argued that they didn't explicitly say it is for such and such purpose, ergo it's not Article 97. So as with almost every open space in Arlington, it is in this kind of liminal space this gray area of the law where we treat it as though it's Article 97 protected. The state thinks it is, but the paper trail to demonstrate that doesn't really exist.
One question. Okay, so is that if we just kind of followed through with that discussion, does that mean if the town decided that they didn't actually take a vote, and they wanted to rescind that Article 97, that's one of the concepts that would take place? So I guess
Right.
everyone
For
would agree
the
in town if it was found out that this happened by mistake, which, I don't understand how that could happen, but this happened by mistake and someone, you know, sent the paperwork in to Boston before it was finalized, and now we have something that should never have happened, and the town doesn't agree with it, and the one way out is to have it, I don't know what the term is, to have it taken out of Article 97, but the process used to be that it went through the Conservation Commission. I think there was a town vote, and then the legislature had to chime in.
Yep.
Is that the process that people are thinking about going through if they feel like it's incorrectly designated as Article 97? Because I don't think the state would back off, and they would want their, the requirements. I don't know if
Absolutely.
that's like in monetary value or habitat value, whatever they decide. Can you expand on that a little bit? Is that kind of where people might want to push this?
If concept C is the preferred option, then there would have to be further research into whether and how to dispose of that land. And I think that's the only eventuality where it really matters at present. Like, we're, as a town, committed to maintaining this as conservation parcel. It's under the ownership of the Conservation Commission. That's not slated to change in any way, shape, or form.
It's one of our biggest properties.
Mm-hmm. And I think it gets tricky from there. If that is the preferred option and the town moves in that direction, then it's first that we have to, follow that paper trail, and then we have to move in all the directions that you just described, from this body to town meeting through the legislature.
A vote of town meeting. Yeah, I can see it. I think a vote of town meeting would be important in that case. All right, that answered it for me. I see a lot of hands up. So I didn't see who went first. Maybe that person would chime in. If not, I'm going to pick David White.
So, this Article 97 sounds ambiguous. Does that affect plans A or B at all?
There would be no change in use or interest in the land if A or B were the chosen option, so no.
Okay. We do that, okay.
Okay, just as it's on my screen, Nathaniel Stevens.
Thanks. Yeah, I was just going to chime in a little more on the Article 97 concept. I didn't remember, David Morgan, that the votes, I just don't remember anything about the votes. I didn't realize that there was ambiguity of those votes at town meeting. I don't think that that's necessarily the determinative factor under the current case law. It can be a wide, a number of factors. It's that demonstrate the property owner's intent to have it as open space, and I think there's other ways of proving it. Like looking at the open space plan, see that's been listed consistently as open space. I'm trying to remember. I don't think we've gotten any state grants. That often helps. That's often another indication of dedication to that use, and certainly the public's been using it as that way. So it is a very fact-intensive process for each particular parcel of land. The easiest way to prove it is a deed that says this land is transferred to the care and control of the Conservation Commission for open space purposes. I mean, that's the the strongest evidence that you have, something recorded. But it sounds like we just have a town meeting vote, and perhaps I would expect there's a deed here and there, which hopefully the language of the deed would be more, have stronger evidence there as to the proof of dedication. So it's very fact intensive. If just to let people know, if the town did decide to grant a conservation restriction on it, we can't grant it to another entity in town, another municipal entity. We'd have to find someone like the Arlington Land Trust or Mass Audubon to hold that conservation restriction to do that. And that's certainly, it's certainly something to consider, because that would really prevent town meeting from anyone in the future deciding that they want to develop it for whatever reason, because they could vote to take it out of, with the Conservation Commission's permission, which might be hard to get. It could theoretically be developed, but if a conservation restriction would make it much harder to have it developed.
So on that point about involving a third party, Nathaniel, it's interesting that we're having back-to-back conversations about Article 97 issues tonight, because what I've recently heard from EEA is that any form of lease or, exchange of interest, whether that's an easement, conservation restriction, etc., is subject to Article 97 dispensation rules. So I have that, that's one person at EEA's opinion, but that is what I was recently told.
But I don't think granting a conservation restriction would require us to go through the PLPA process.
That's what they described to me. I mean,
that doesn't make sense, because we're not. There's no change in use.
I would agree.
We're protecting it. Okay, I think that person's misinformed, because yeah. Anyways, okay, we can have a sidebar about that later. But
there is more conversation to follow on our next discussion item. But I just want to flag that this is the way that you and I think about it, at any rate.
Okay, thanks. My other comment is I think I'm in favor of A or B. I'm
likewise
pretty much vehemently opposed to concept C, and I think unfortunately the house, just given the expense of maintaining the house for the town, and more importantly the impact of having that house and driveway in conservation land, is just not consistent with conservation land. And as someone said, and I've said for many years, and even when my friends lived at the house, is you approach it and you're like, oh, this isn't conservation land, it's someone's driveway. Can I really go up here? So I think removing those, what I'm going to call obstacles, as nice as they are architecturally, those obstacles are important to do. And I also agree with the comments that we don't want to make this into a park, make this manicured and park-like and look like an Olmsted Park. I would urge to keep it forested and make those slight enhancements, I'd call them, that the team recommended. Thanks. That's all I have to say.
All right, so Mike
trails in some cases.
Yeah, thanks. I haven't read Article 97 in some years, but as I recall, there's a determination made by the legislature about including or changing the status of an Article 97 land. And I don't know if there's some official statement somewhere that says this is indeed or is not Article 97 land. But I think that because if we do end up changing use in one of those options, you need 2/3 vote by both branches of the legislature. That part I recall from 97. So I don't know if we have any official situation here. What I'm hearing is that it may be on the deed, it may not be the deed, it may be town meeting, it may not be. I don't know if we have a first step here to actually make a determination one way or another.
Usually we would get an opinion from town council would be the approach. They would offer a legal opinion as to what it is. I mean, short of going to court and getting a court declaration, it's just a matter of coming up with, developing our position about this.
Yeah,
it's one way to think about it.
Yeah, it might be. I don't know if that's necessary, especially if we're not going to be changing use, but it might be helpful to get that clarification.
Yeah.
I will say that we reached out to town council during the feasibility study. I can't remember if Mike Cunningham was town council at that time or if it was his predecessor, Doug Heim. I think it was Doug. And
Oh, was it? I thought it was Mike. I thought Jackie was going to look into it.
we've
Maybe.
had further conversation about Article
Oh, with
97
her.
in
Yeah.
general,
Oh.
and included Jackie in that conversation. She more or less said what you said. It's a very fact-intensive process. There's really no
And I'm sorry,
decisive thing.
Jackie is this former assistant town council, not Jackie, not our Jackie Yee.
Not our conservation
Oh.
administrator.
Jackie's other job.
Okay.
Jackie's extremely good at what she does. She is not a lawyer. But Jacqueline, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Let's correct that record. Anyway, the recommendation there was, more or less the record is inconclusive and don't say it unless we can say it for real.
That's why
But
I
we can
was
still do what we
wondering.
want to do with it in terms of consistent use, right?
Right. So what Nathaniel was describing in terms of case law does raise the question of whether we could, take that position and substantiate it in the terms that the courts have decided, and or if we could get a judge to basically say that it's Article 97 land. At least that's paraphrasing what I understood of Nathaniel's comments. But those are options that we could pursue.
But do we need to resolve that before we move with the plan?
No, I think we don't. It doesn't become an issue unless you do concept C.
Right.
So
Well-
David, just before we go to Brian, you keep on saying these are things that we could do. Is that directly addressed to the Conservation Commission, whoever's sitting? These are action items for whoever's on the commission at that time based on feedback from the town.
Yeah, it's ultimately your vote on which, if any, of the concepts are preferred that matters, but I say we because I'll be the one to talk to legal about it and sort of sort out those details. So ultimately up to you, and I'm following the orders.
So, and one last clarifying question. Jacqueline said, don't say it's not Article 97 land unless we can prove it. Is that what you were saying? Or don't say it's not Article 97 land? Which one was? So don't say anything.
She's a lawyer, Chuck.
Don't say anything. It's our land.
All right.
Now, the advice, of course, was it's inconclusive. You can't say anything definitive, and don't try to claim it in either direction. The most that we can say about it
Okay.
is that
Well, that's
the
more
state
clear.
lists it as
Okay.
such.
Okay. Brian McBride.
Yeah, so it's just such a rare opportunity to expand natural open space in town. I think we'd find if we follow option A, the kind of favorite, it's going to be like when you get rid of that bad couch in your living room and say, wow, this is a really nice room after all. It's just, it's bad. It's a bad fit with that land, and removing it is going to make the land all the better, probably in an amazing way.
But don't
and then
call it
just
a
the
couch until you. No, never mind. Go ahead. Don't call it a couch until it's out of the
It's a
house.
sleeping vehicle. And then the second piece is, David and I were talking about earlier this year about looking for some CPA money or some money from other sources to enhance trails and signage and other amenities at the Concom land in general. And, we came up with this list, and I don't have it perfect, but it was basically, clear welcoming signage, marked and maintained trails, access to the site for handicapped children and in all town residents, habitat restoration with invasives management and natives plantings, and then cultural nature signs at key points and maybe some rest stations. So we had this sort of list of like good Concom features on a parcel of land, and we may consider keeping those in mind as we go forward with this process. That I think those are pretty generally agreeable things that are good and would enhance both the nature and the human enjoyment of the land. So that's my comment.
Sure. Should we get Mike? So David Kaplan, and then I think we're going on second rounds. So David Kaplan.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Jackie, for putting the deck together, and thank you, David, for presenting it. That was a nice refresher and a project of years past. So thanks for bringing it back to the forefront for us, and thanks, Nathaniel, for pushing for it. Yeah, again, I'm sort of leaning towards A. I think there's a lot of opportunity for landscape restoration and concept A. I like the idea of, bringing as many people, to an overlook as possible. I do like that little trail up to the top of the ledge. That could be neat, but yeah, definitely leaning much more towards A. Yeah, and it's just, looking forward to supporting next steps.
All right, great. All right, so see everyone's hands. We got three more hands up from the commission. I'm gonna go with believe it was Nathaniel Stevens. I'm just gonna go across my screen again.
Thanks, and I'll try to be brief. Also, yeah, echo Dave's thanks to Jackie for putting together an excellent presentation and David for presenting it so well. I was just going to say one possible thing on this Article 97 issue is we could submit a warrant to town, a warrant article to town meeting, just to have them revote to affirm the purpose of that. If there's an issue about the prior town meeting votes, the votes can also be redone to clarify. And I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
Sure, Mike Gilderscame.
Yes, whichever option we come up with down the road, I assume the town's going to have to raise some money to implement this plan, whatever it is, especially with the expense of taking down that building and garage. I assume that, I don't know if there's any state money, but I assume the town would have to assume a lot of responsibility for that. Is that correct?
Absolutely. This will be a big job. I am not sure off the top of my head what funding sources would be good options, but the ones that come to mind first are either reimbursement programs or have to be matched by a significant contribution by the town. So it would require an allocation, pretty significant investment by the town right out the gate.
So whatever option we end up with, it's going to take several years before those funds would probably become available.
Most definitely.
All right, last hand is David White.
And all sorts of possibilities here. This seemed like a possible CPA project to me, but any further investigations are in order.
That's true. We could move forward with design development. For example, if one concept is chosen, we could do that within a CPA level of award and accomplish, construction ready designs and so forth. Then it's up to really me to find the money, per Mike's comment. So,
David, my discussion with the CPA umbrella group was that permanent construction of permanent objects such as trails, signs, seats or as rest spots and so forth are fundable CPA items. Demolition of a house, probably not. But maybe some of the non-house construction pieces could be covered with CPA money if we were to improve a trail or put signage at the trailheads and so forth.
very good point.
Yeah.
Yep, can always phase it.
Well, that was good discussion, but And it did take a little bit of time. Is anyone watching tonight's meeting that has a question? I'm only going to take a couple of these and then we're going to move on to the next thing. So, Dave, you can take over. I'm just going to.
Yeah, I saw Winnell hand up.
Hi, thank you very much. Winnell Evans, who cannot figure out how to get her face going, but that's all right. Orchard Place Town Meeting member, walker, runner, lover of our wild spaces. And I want to say thank you to the commission members and especially to David Morgan for all the thought that has gone into this. I have to say, though, I feel that there should have been a fourth option. And I believe if there had been, you would have seen even stronger support for that option from the public. And that option would have been to do nothing to the woods. Even the improvements that have been discussed tonight, improving the paths and providing wayfinding and signage and interpretive signage and improving the kiosks. All of this, to my mind, is a park. And the areas in town where you can go and not see evidence of humanity are so vanishingly small. They are under so much pressure from so many different needs. You know, they wanted to do mountain biking. Well, there is mountain biking at Menotomy Rocks Park. There's all different kinds of recreation going on there. Turkey Hill is still fairly wild, but Mount Gilboa has been a refuge for me. It is a place to go and to get away from humanity. I'm sorry, but just for a little while, and just to have that space. So I very much hope that the commission will think about that and think of those of us who really, really need and crave this kind of engagement with nature. And also just a reminder about and this is my last comment, about the ADA component of this. The parking, the ADA compliant trails, wayfinding, everything else already exists exactly 2 blocks away from this site at the reservoir, which is a beautiful place in its own right, but it is not wild. And those of us who need wildness need and want Mount Gilboa to stay as is. And thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Thanks for the comment. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Somebody on the chat, Chuck.
Yeah, Marina.
Oh, yeah, Marina, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Marina Popova at 255 Ridge Street. I kind of agree with the previous speaker. I think that, a lot of residents, I also attended a couple of the meetings there, when we had the community engagement meetings for the Mount Gilboa. And I think that a lot of residents of Arlington, they were expressing like explicit desire to leave the park, as much as it is as possible. My biggest concern is how many trees are going to be cut down, if we do pretty much any of the options, because this is like something that we really are losing a lot of tree canopy right now in Arlington, and and we need to try to minimize this as much as possible. So I just wanted to ask you to please consider, minimizing that aspect, if at all possible. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for the comment. I did see Sue had her hand up. I'm not sure if that Sue Doctorow. And this will
Yes.
be the last, sorry, Sue, just a second. This will be the last comment we'll take on this matter tonight.
Oh, I just wanted to thank you for not entertaining concept C. And I do like the sound of concept A, but I also respect the idea of minimizing the removal of the wild feeling of the land. So I just wanted to thank you and to thank the other commenters. And I look forward to this advancing. And would also like to explore any way that the CPA committee can get involved and help support it. Because as Brian said, it really is creating some new open space in a sense. So thank you.
Welcome. So I do see another hand up, but we are going to move on. This is, we have another quite lengthy discussion coming up, and this will probably come up for a second discussion. I think there's work to do with the Conservation Commission and some questions to answer, but I'm not opposed to seeing this on the agenda sometime in the future. So with that, I'd like to move on to our next agenda item, which is well, it's probably like David said, it's another Article 97 discussion. It's access to Window on the Mystics for a Massachusetts tribe. And I know David is kind of leading this effort for the Conservation Commission. And so, David, I'm going to have you do a little bit of an introduction about this and how we got here. And then just bring on, I don't know if anyone's here that went to the site visit. I know David White did. So if David wants to chime in, that would be helpful because I know you went to the site visit when they were talking about this. So with that, David Morgan, take it away.
All right, thanks, Chuck. I don't see anybody here from the tribe that I recognize right now, but maybe when we get to the end of the intro here, we can check in again. So almost a year ago to the day, in fact, I was contacted by the members and friends of the Massachusetts tribe to talk about the land at Window on the Mystic, which is an area that's known to the tribe and to the town as a historically significant area. And Ferris Gray, who is the Sagamore for the tribe, explained to me at that time, and we made subsequent visit, like Chuck mentioned, that the western edge of Upper Mystic Lake is where the tribe last held an interest in land in Arlington. And it's actually the estuary, or what was the estuary directly to the south of Window on the Mystic, where Squaw Sachem was with the last remaining tribe members. So given the importance of the site to the tribe, Ferris and the others had reached out looking to develop a relationship with the town, just to learn more about what we know about the property. So, I responded saying that I would investigate the history of it, its legal status and how the town came to own it, etc. Like I said, that was about a year ago. The past 11, well, not the ensuing 11 months, it lived in a draft message in my Outlook folder with notes from that meeting. And just in really, let's say late March, early April, I started to dig into this more when they got in touch again. So you'll remember that we had a site visit scheduled, I think it was the 4th of April, and like Chuck mentioned, David joined us out there. We talked with the tribe, some others, about their relationship to the land. And when I got back to the office, I started to dig into that history. So what I learned was that the town's held that parcel since 1975. A couple of different funding sources paid for it, 2 grants, and I presume capital budget money. I don't know very much about the preceding 75 years, like the bulk of the 20th century. It's kind of a gray area in terms of ownership, other than I know that the city of Boston owned that parcel and indeed much of the surrounding area until the early 1900s. Prior to that, it was a series of settlers, starting in the 1640s, changed hands a number of times over that period. And of course, prior to that, all the rest of history, it was indigenous land. So I want to show you these maps now and talk about other research that the town has done. We know through the townwide archaeological reconnaissance survey that was conducted back in 2022, 2023, that Window on the Mystic and really every pink area on this map were designated as, this is pre-contact sensitive areas, so meaning prior to European settlement here. And just to note, this doesn't necessarily indicate any archaeological findings in any of these areas, really describes the potential for those kind of findings to occur if you go looking, and the indication in like the environmental conditions, the information that's available from historical records, etc., that the area is likely to be significant. And likewise, you'll see here are the post-contact sensitive areas, and in each I've highlighted Window on the Mystic, the yellow circle here. It's this parcel on this map. So you'll note that it is not a post-contact sensitive area, but a pre-contact sensitive area. And I've drawn over it a little bit, but you can see here that this is the land of Squassacham. So I'll stop sharing for a moment. Hang on, let me get back to my notes. So we were talking about this previously. Article 97 is at issue here. State lists it as protected. Of course, it's Concom owned. It's also on the bank of Upper Mystic Lake, so there's jurisdictional area there. And so I gathered all of this up and went back to the tribe with all of the information, specifically to Ferris. And we started to talk about how the town can ensure durable access to the tribe since it is such an important area. And, clearly given the legal status, its ownership by the town ensures public access, to some degree, but there is always that possibility of a change in ownership, and that would jeopardize the tribe's access. So, David and I talked about it when we were on site, said, this deserves further consideration, and that's when I reached out to a couple of sources on that question of Article 97 and the sort of means and methods for developing relationships with tribes that involve some kind of, I'll say interest, but it doesn't necessarily mean that in the legal sense of the word, in land. So one group that I reached out to was the Native Land Conservancy, and they're a group that's made a number of arrangements of this type around the state. They've published some guidance on the topic, and so I reviewed that, got a sense of some of the possible pathways for an agreement like this. And then I approached them directly and said, have you ever dealt with Article 97? Because this seems like it could be an issue. Their response was, it's never posed a problem for us. We've had agreements that are on all kinds of lands. Our big concern is, you have a broad set of protections for Indigenous folks across the board. And you'll see that in the email that was submitted as correspondence for this meeting. And then likewise, as I mentioned earlier, I reached out to EEA and said that more pointed question about, if we were to offer something highly formal, like a lease or an easement or, some kind of interest, quote unquote, in the land to the tribe, would that trigger the Article 97 process? And they said yes, they think so. And so that's Michael Gendron. There's a email again in the correspondence with his thoughts on that matter. So all of that said, I simply want to raise the issue with this group about going further down this path. I mean, I think it's worth doing. I'm happy to continue doing the work, facilitating this conversation, the research, etc. But the question for the commission to consider is whether you're open to considering some type of agreement with the tribe so that it ensures both the protection of the land indefinitely and then their access to it. And before I totally turn it back over to you, I want to note that in my conversations with the tribe, they've said that they have no interest in changing the use of the property, its management, etc. What they're interested in is this long-term access and partnering with the town to, discuss how the land gets used over the duration. So I don't foresee any sort of hazard, I guess is the word I want to use for, furthering this relationship and basically doing right by the tribe. But I wonder how all of y'all are feeling about it, and I see hands raised, so I will stop there and let discussion go.
I see David White has his hand up.
This seems like a larger town question that should involve more than the Conservation Commission. Other groups in town that should be somehow involved in this process. It seems like maybe a decision is to be made by the town meeting. So I think it's sort of more than we can do ourselves, but it's worth pursuing, I think.
Sorry, David, I didn't quite catch the last thing you said. So are you
I
suggesting
think it's
that
more than we can do ourselves. It's worth probably pursuing.
I see. It's worth pursuing and learning like who else needs to be involved as stakeholders and bringing it to their attention through that process.
It might even need to be a town meeting decision. Not sure, but talk to the legal counsel about that.
Right. Certainly, if it's an Article 97 thing, it goes in that direction, and maybe in other cases. So thank you for clarifying.
Go to Mike Kiltiscam.
Thank you. I understand, I think, that the tribe is seeking access in a different way than they currently have, or I'm not exactly sure what would change by some agreement between the town and the tribe in terms of their access or level of activity on that piece of land. So I don't know if there's something that they would want to do that they can't do now. I'm not sure how that works. Thanks.
So when I looked into the Native Land Conservancy, they offered some examples of, for example, Native cultural practices that would, in some circumstances, not be allowed by, for example, like park use rules and regs. And those are, a variety of things. It depends on the situation, the practices of the tribe, the situation where they're dealing with the municipality, etc. So like, just by way of example, and not suggesting that this is what the tribe's after, like a cultural burn, for example, where, you light a fire and use that fire as a tool, similar to, land management practices that are done by the state, for example, but done by the tribe as more or less a private entity, that wouldn't be allowed. For example, just imagine that happening at Magnolia Field, and you get the kind of sense of what types of restrictions folks encounter. And while there is public access to Window on the Mystic and it is preserved as conservation land, there is simply the threat of it no longer being such in the future. And this being a really deeply historical place and very storied location for the tribe, they want to ensure that, absent the town, they can maintain access.
Yeah, I think it
think
would
that's
help.
the chief thing.
I think it would help if we could, again, I don't know if David is correct, that we have to go to town meeting or whatever else we need to do, but I think it would help to be a little more specific in what they're asking for so that we know how to respond.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to broach it before we have a conversation about a yes or no on a specific proposal, right? Like, what they're seeking is a relationship with the town such that we could navigate this question jointly. And that's what I've been responding to over the past year, and more so in the past couple of months. So bringing it to your attention is, again, more about like, do we continue in this direction, or is this just a non-starter?
So let's move on to, if anyone is visiting tonight or joining us here tonight, we're going to get the Conservation Commission questions first. So that's why we haven't called on anyone else. So, but I see some hands raised. And so I want to go to, and I'm guessing out of you three, I'm going to say David McBride, Brian McBride. David.
Brother, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, so my quick reaction, David Morgan, is I feel a little uncomfortable with the idea of granting additional access to beyond what the general public access is without knowing what potential unexpected consequences might be of that. But my son is going to college in Washington State, and his college does some really interesting connections with the tribes in that vicinity in terms of joint planning and joint celebrations and so forth. So I think there are probably models out there for like a collaborative approach to managing this land. Maybe that would be establishing rules and regulations for the site together, which were, to Mike's point, which would be more concrete. The Native American fire burn may happen once a year between July 1st and 10th, or something solid and concrete that we can understand what the consequences were. And maybe the tribe would feel honored and respected by that sort of joint rule setting or guidelines for use of the property that we could write together. That's my comment.
I'll turn to Nathaniel Stevens.
Thanks. Yeah, I echo Mike and Brian's comments as well. Another suggestion is to wait for EOEEA to promulgate the regulations about the PLPA. Those were proposed, put out for public comment over a year and a half ago, and they ran another public comment period, and God only knows why that those haven't been issued yet. But I think that if we get farther down the road, to wait for those to come out so we have clarity about that Article 97 question. But yeah, I'm not opposed to exploring this further, but I do think that we need to learn more. And as Brian says, what are the consequences? And if I hate to say it, if we have an agreement with this group, does it obligate us to have agreements with other groups? I don't know who those other groups are. So I think there's that. And that's the type of question that I think town council could readily answer in terms of using public land for particular groups. And then are we obligated to entertain sort of have to engage in special relationships with other groups. I just don't know. And maybe Native Americans, that doesn't apply. They have a special status, but that's just another thing that comes to mind. I don't know what the answers are, but I just think it's also something to explore. Thanks. But I hope we could work out something.
Nathaniel, is there a mechanism you have in mind for when you're talking about granting permission to other groups? Is there like some kind of statute or?
There's not, I don't think for conservation land, I think there is, for parks and stuff, and you can, I think Park and Rec can issue permits, special use permits or something. I think there's something in those Park and Rec statutes that's established. I'm not aware of anything off the top of my head. And not that I've done research into this, but just over the years, I haven't heard of conservation commissions granting permits for conservation land. I don't know. One person to come to mind to ask about this is Michelle Grisenda. I don't know if in Lincoln or when she was in Weston, there were particular pieces of property that say people got married at, and they had, maybe they issued permits for wedding ceremonies. I don't know, something like that. But going back to someone else's prior comments, we do have, I believe we still have our conservation land regulations in place, which would affect, we voted on those 15, 20 years ago. So those are still in place. And for instance, I think those say no fires. So that's like something that would have, David Morgan was saying, we have to change that or have an exception for that, for any type of ceremony or practice that the Native Americans would want to engage in that would require fires or flames.
Sure.
Thanks.
And just remember, everybody, I'm not suggesting that they're going to burn anything.
Right. No, it's an example, but something that we normally would, I think most of us would immediately come to mind, like, no, we can't have a bonfire there.
Right.
David's wishing he had another example at this moment.
Yeah, so, right.
So understood, though, David. Completely understood. David Kaplan?
Yeah, I remember coming across this a while ago and just looked it up, and there is some language in the state's model conservation restriction. You guys may have already known this, but it does kind of reference indigenous cultural practices, including for ceremonial purposes, and one of the examples is like harvesting plant life, things like that. Also there's a little comment too in the Word doc on the model CR that suggests investigating MOUs or some other mechanism. I know that's still up in the air, but I guess my thoughts on this in general, that I just wouldn't want to necessarily allow or entertain additional use that would come in conflict with our purpose of protecting the wetland resources in that area as well. So again, it's just going to have to, I'm interested in exploring it and understanding, what the options could be. But again, just want to be, concerned about potential conflicts, and inconsistencies further down the line. And I also, to be honest, I just can't imagine a future where the town does not own that land. So I'm wondering what kind of contingency we're planning for, and potentially giving up interest in land that, for a future condition that's like highly unlikely.
Okay, Brian, I see your hand up, and then I'm going to go to, I'm going to stop the commission after this, and we're going to move on to other people. So go ahead.
My hand's down, Chuck. That was just.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
My mistake. Yeah, I bet.
Ms. Lee, please speak at this time. Introduce yourself for the record.
Yes, thank you. My name is Ellen Lee, and I am the chair of the Indigenous Justice Working Group, part of Social Justice Committee at First Parish Unitarian Universalist in Arlington. And I have worked with many other groups in town, Old Town Mill, the Dowling Museum, Human Rights Commission, and so forth, on various Native American celebrations, activities, and have been also collaborating with the Massachusetts tribe and have had contact with Ferris Gray on a number of things as well. And I know that their desire, himself and other elders of the tribe, is in partnering, as in having access to the land. And I can't fully speak for him. I know that they weren't available this evening, but they have been involved in various meetings with David Morgan and others, and myself. And the idea is, you know, this is native space that's been their ancestral homeland for thousands of years, and they are very interested in caring for the land as they have for all this time. And I think that it is not only beneficial to us in terms of being in right relationship with them, but also in terms of benefiting from a partnership where their traditional ecological knowledge can help us to have a healthier ecosystem. It's land and it's also water. These are things, I mean, I know from my collaboration also with the Native Land Conservancy, where they help to educate the public. You know, they have access to the land to be able to engage in their traditional cultural lifeways and practices, but they also can open the land and educate the public about things like removing invasive species, restoring native species, taking care of the land, enhancing biodiversity. And so I think this is something that could be a mutually beneficial partnership. So I hope that as a town, as a conservation commission, that we can get behind this to be able to not only support the Massachusetts tribe on their ancestral homelands, but also to be able to see that, you know, have the perspective that this could be beneficial to all of us.
Sure, thank
you
you for that. I know that Marina has chatted again and she'd like to talk, so please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, Marina Popova, 255 Ridge Street. I don't know, I can't figure out how to turn on get the hand up.
No, you're doing a great job. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that I also kind of, I mean, it's great, of course, to cooperate and have, you know, help and, you know, interest from, you know, from other groups, and it's a great thing. I just also don't understand what kind of things, you know, what are not allowed right now that, you know, potentially this new agreement would allow to do, because it is a conservation land. So everything that we do there, I mean, it kind of governed by the rules of the conservation, which means that you probably should not be allowing to do anything else, like, because any other use would be the park and rec, right? I mean, basically, unless we are thinking that, you know, it's okay to turn this land into the park and land type of the, you know, public park, then I don't see how, because basically you are changing the use. If you're going, for example, God forbid, to allow some fires, oh my God, I mean, that really scared me just hearing that there would be some fires allowed in that area, then that is not, again, a conservation, right? I mean, anymore. So that's what I would like to know. As for all the other aspects, like caring and, you know, invasives and stuff, then we actually already do that job, and it would be great, you know, if we could, of course, coordinate and cooperate with other groups. That would be a great and very beneficial, you know, very beneficial goal, of course. Yeah, I just, you know, hope that if we go forward with changing the use of land, then at least there will be some restrictions that whatever is not allowed right now to do on the conservation land, it will not be allowed to do, you know, going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Marina. So Louisa would like to speak at this moment. So please just introduce yourself for the record.
Yeah, hi. My name is Louisa Baldwin. I am born and raised in Arlington, and I first worked with the Massachusetts tribe when I was a student at Arlington High School, working to change the mascot image of Arlington High School back in 2020 and 2021. Since then, I have continued to be in touch with the tribe, and Last year, I was able to complete a thesis project that was a historical geography of the tribe's ancestral territory. And as part of that process, I went on a boat tour of the Boston Harbor and Islands with members of the tribe, including Ferris. And I just wanted to echo Ellen's comments about the component of both stewardship, but also sharing of knowledge and Indigenous lifeways. In my experiences with the tribe, and I don't want to speak for them, though I know they weren't able to be here today, but part of what I gain from my time that I've spent with them is learning about the ways that they connect things like land and water and animals and plants and themselves into a different sort of web than many people who are not raised in Indigenous communities, and how part of what they seek to do in regaining autonomy and stewardship in especially wild and open and green spaces in the present day is to be able to share that knowledge with the communities who are now co-stewards of that land. And so I would also hope that we're able to continue going down this path and working something out.
Thank you, Louisa. Okay, I don't see anyone else making comments. It's a difficult conversation. It's not. It feels a little.
Chuck, there was someone in the chat who I think
In the
wanted to
chat
speak.
again?
I think we all
No, I
set?
got Louisa. I didn't see
Sorry
anyone
about that.
else. Sure. If anyone would like to speak, we can raise hand function. You can use the chat. You can turn your camera on.
It
All that
might be
works.
helpful to have a copy of Luisa's paper.
Yeah. Louisa, would you send your paper to David Morgan and allow the commission to review it? Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, absolutely.
Thanks. Yeah, I was going to say, I was just saying it just seems, we're not used to this. The Conservation Commission usually is used to reviewing projects that have all the details in the paperwork, and what's not there, we ask for those to be filled in before we make decisions. So from what I heard here tonight, it's a review authority would want to understand those questions before they step in. A little deeper, but for myself, I think it's hard to to know that this was tribal land and we have an opportunity here. And I know that there might be at some point a leap of faith that has to happen. But when you think about where it's at and how it's situated next to the Mystic, it seems easy to believe that what the use it was of this land in the past. So I'm not sure we're ready to take a vote at this point. I think we need more information, or even to give hey, David, we want to hear more. But it looks like from what you're doing is well received by the commission. We just have more questions, and probably at this point, too many questions to say that we're heading in whichever direction. So I would just, I heard that maybe the tribe might come in, but I would gather up some more of those questions and try to figure out, not to have any mysteries. Like, what is proposed for the land? Let's just have an open conversation about that. I'm not afraid of what they might say. I understand that it's probably not what's not happening there now, but I would like to know. I would like to know exactly what I'm going to agree to. So if you have any closing statements, David, please feel free to say them now.
I appreciate your consideration. I think this is a great discussion. I will absolutely look into the things that you've suggested and get back with the tribe and others and discuss how this conversation went. Come back to y'all when I have more to share.
Great, thank you. Okay, and with that, we're going to move on. And I appreciate everyone who participated in this conversation. And we're going to move on to our next agenda item because it is almost 9 o'clock. And so we're on number 5 on our updates, and that's a water bodies update. So David White, that's you. Are you ready to give your update?
I don't have much new about the water bodies. David Morgan, anything about the water bodies?
The contract renewal for Spy Pond is in process in the sense that the contractor has signed it and the town admins responsible for countersigning and executing it are doing so. It's making the rounds. I think it just needs the town manager's signature at this point. So likely that'll happen tomorrow. The treatment is more or less due for the first round, like maybe middle of next week. So we've put a hold on the calendar for the contractor to get out there and do so. All we need is that final signature in order to greenlight them. Since it's water and wetland, as you know, doing the application. And I should say SWCA, who does the survey portion, would do so immediately prior to water and wetlands treatment at Spy Pond. And water and wetlands going to be at Hills Pond on Wednesday, I believe, of next week. So trying to make all of this align. Seems like everything is ready to go.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
If there are no questions, we're going to move on to CPA update with Brian McBride.
Yeah, no news, Chuck. I'm not sure. I haven't been following town meeting, but I expect they're voting on the approval in the next session or two. It should be soon.
Okay, and we'll get an update at that time. I know Sarah is not here tonight, so there wasn't a tree committee liaison report. And Nathaniel, with the Sims conservation restriction, do you have anything?
No update from we haven't met since our last meeting. We're meeting next week, I believe.
All right. Okay, so next is the fishing line working group, and Susan has a letter, and it was in the correspondence. So she gives a brief update, and she says that Scott Walker is the acting chair of the working group, and he is the PNR commissioner. Courtney Duggan helped to run the meeting, and she's taking meeting notes. And she's also the director of recreation. The members are Scott Walker, chair, Chris Wilson is steward of the FSPP, and he's a butter to Spy Pond and a watershed volunteer. Hung Chen is working with Jim Lacey at Mass Wildlife, and he's helping coordinate the fishing education group, and Susan's on the Concom. Elaine Kravitz is a resident activist or active in fishing and waste and cleanup in Arlington. And Asia Kapka is a resident and a wildlife rescue volunteer. So that's the makeup of the water fishing line working group and some of their background. And so that first meeting, they discussed briefly introductions. They introduced themselves, and Scott and Courtney reviewed the PNR guidance principles for the group, and that's to reduce fishing line waste, angler education, and community collaboration. So members reported on their continued experience with fish line waste and lures and bobbers and hooks in the Arlington ponds, and their frustration with the presence of these problems and harm to wildlife. Some discussion about the problems with the fishing line receptacles and their maintenance. And their action items is to suggest that they all send 5 top issues to help focus on the discussion going forward. The next meeting will be May 12th, and they intend to have bi-weekly meetings. So I think Susan will be here for our next meeting, and if they meet before that, haven't really done the math on that, we'll get another report. But it does sound like they're starting, and I was surprised to see that there's receptacle issues, and I know that the receptacles just went out. They were just installed. I'm going to say no more than 3 weeks ago. So that would be interesting to get more of an update if that was part of the new receptacles or past receptacles, or the fact that they weren't there during the winter because they took them down and it was only a temporary program. So we will find all this out moving forwards. But I'm glad that Susan has stepped up and took on that role. So no questions with that. And after fishing line working group, I I almost don't even want to do this. I hate to tell you, I've really heard from David way too much tonight. So, Jackie, if you want to say anything for the Conservation Administrator's report, please just mute David, and we'll hear from you.
I'm good.
All right, David, I guess I can't convince her to say anything. It's back to you.
Listen, the only thing that I would say is in response to your last point about Susan's report, which is that I met with Natasha in Recreation on Friday of last week, and those issues with the receptacles are that, it's a PVC pipe that's sort of J-shaped upside down. It's hard to get fishing line and lures into a container like that. You don't know what's in there. You don't want to stuff your hand into a place where there's potentially hooks and so forth, quite understandably. So folks have been a little loose with it, and it's on the ground around the containers. So they're looking to address that by putting an implement, like a stick or something, so you can shove stuff into the container and pack it down, so that hopefully there's less that escapes and people aren't so trepidatious about putting it in. So other than that, they have a plan for collecting it and so forth. The other thing on that front is we've been working on getting the approval to put a dumpster for invasive removal at Burns Arena, and that is a go. We just need to order the thing. So all public lands invasive management projects that are done by volunteers will have a central place to drop off debris. It'll all get taken care of. I think that's the end of the story.
What's the funding mechanism on that, David, for the dumpster? Is it the Conservation Commission, or is it the town, or is it CPA?
Concom, water bodies, more than likely.
No, that's appropriate. That's good use of our money for sure.
It's $500, and then I want to say $5 a day thereafter, after the first 2 weeks or something like that. So it's a pretty nominal cost.
And those dumpsters are left there for the duration of the project?
It'll be through the growing season, so we'll get them in late April, early May of each year is the plan, and then take them out in September.
Did the dumpster company give you a special rate on the refrigerators and TV sets that are going to be dumped in there over the weekend, or is it just paying full rate on that?
I'm trying to get the one that's got a door on the side. We're going to put a passcode on it. So folks who are in the volunteer, the land storage program, get the passcode so that they know how to dump off their debris, but it's otherwise covered and secured, so it's not collecting people's trash.
Yeah, in my experience, it only takes 2 or 3 30-yard dumpsters to kind of clean up all the houses around your project in any neighborhood. So, just take that for what it's worth. All right. we're almost at the end of tonight's meeting. I don't know if anyone has anything to say from the commission that we didn't, that would like to bring something up, or anyone attending tonight's meeting.
We got to vote to postpone the other two hearings.
Oh, that's right. Thank you, David. So let's turn to DEP file number 190375, and the Conservation Commission expects to continue this hearing, which we're going to do, and we're going to continue this hearing till May 21st, 2026. So that is the 26 Dudley Street hearing notice of intent. Can I have a second?
Second.
David Kaplan was second. So I'm going to say Mike Gildersgame,
Yes.
Brian McBride,
Yes.
David White,
Yes.
David Kaplan,
Yes.
Nathaniel Stevens,
Yes.
and Chuck Teroni says yes. So for our next,
Sorry, who made that motion?
I did.
so that was,
Okay.
yeah, Nathaniel Stevens. That's kind of like a running, it's always David. Just, that's his spot.
I
Don't
hope when I
change-
get off the commission, someone will make a motion.
Someone will, yeah, that'll be, it's like the primer. He primes
step
us, and
up.
then we all go. So the second one that we're going to continue tonight is DEP file number 910378, which is a notice of intent for 91 Sunnyside Ave. No discussion. We're requested by the applicant to continue this meeting to 5/21. Do I have that right? He said a month, right? Do I have that right?
That's not a month.
It would
That's
be
2 weeks.
the first meeting in June, which will be the 4th.
Okay, June 4th. So continue this hearing to June 4th at the applicant's request. Can I get a motion for that?
So moved. Oh, second.
Oh,
Wait a minute.
Oh.
My 19 years on the commission, all I heard was Nathaniel. So
Yeah,
Nathaniel's.
it's burned in your ear.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
Dave scooped me.
Yeah. Can I get a second? Who's that? Dave Kaplan seconded.
No, I think not. I seconded.
Yeah, all right. Kaplan and seconded by Nathaniel Stevens. Brian McBride,
yes.
Mike Gildersgame,
Yes.
David White,
Yes.
David Kaplan.
We're all gonna have to step up in Nathaniel's absence.
Yes,
Yes.
there you go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, good job. Yeah,
Good
thank you.
training. Yes.
Yeah. Nathaniel Stevens said yes, and
Yes.
Chuck Teroni says yes also. So those were continued. So now we're going to get to the point where is there anything else
So
need to be
moved.
said for
Move to
tonight's
adjourn.
meeting?
Move to
Oh, wait a
adjourn.
minute. I just want to read something in the record, into the record. And this had to do with Mount Gilboa. Ellen Lee said that I would appreciate consideration of disabled people who also desire access to the wild as much as possible. Thank you. I'm a wheelchair user. So anyways, I wanted to read that into the record for everyone's thoughts on Mount Gilboa.
Good.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you.
Thanks for the good discussion on that.
Okay. All right. So let's have a motion to
So moved.
adjourn, and then we're just going to do the old Nathaniel Stevens hand wave, like.
Long.
All right. Have a good night.
Yeah.
Good
Good night,
night,
everyone.
everybody.
See you guys.
Take care.
Unanimous.
Bye.
Bye now.